Hey guys, it's Dave again, back again for another video. Welcome back to Dave's Dimension. Today we're going to do a little bit different, a little bit of a departure, if you will. Okay? Excuse me, guys. So, what we're going to talk about today is any Trekkies out there, big Star Trek fans. If you're a big fan, you might have checked out this past week. We had the Season 3 premiere of Star Trek Discovery. Now, in case you're not that familiar with it, this takes place just before the original series, the original Star Trek. During this time is the time of when Captain Pike was captain of the Enterprise. Now, Discovery takes part on a different ship, an experimental ship. First season kind of explores, there's a big battle, big war going on in this ship, and what this ship can actually do. I'm not going to give away spoilers if you've never watched it. Now, Season 3 is a bit of a reboot. It is and it isn't, but it is. Okay? So, spoiler alert. Spoiler alert, guys. I'm warning you. If you've not watched Seasons 1 or 2, you want to stop this video. You want to come back to it after you've seen those seasons. Okay? I will be discussing things that have appeared in the Season 1 episode of Star Trek Discovery. Or sorry, the Season 3 episode of Episode 1 of Star Trek Discovery. If you've not watched this episode, if you've not watched Season 3 Episode 1, stop this video, come back after you've watched it. Okay? I think that's pretty sufficient warning right there, guys. Okay? So, Season 3 Episode 1. Got a nice little recap of what happened at the end of last season. Okay? First season starts out in the distant future. The year is 3188. Well beyond Star Trek The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, everything. The whole kit and caboodle. Quantum leap so far ahead. Now, first we see this ship with a very debonair, very, very likable, roguish character by the name of Book. He's piloting a ship and he's being chased by someone. Well, he's trying to outrun this person. He's got kind of a Han Solo kind of vibe going on here, okay? So, he's being chased and then suddenly a wormhole opens and here comes Michael Burnham in her suit, in her Red Angel spacesuit. She actually collides with his ship, causing him to crash land on a nearby planet where she also crashes. Okay? So, she goes to the future. She's lost on a planet now. No sign of Discovery, by the way. We don't know where Discovery is even by the end of this episode. She comes across him, and during the course of the episode, I'm not going to get into overly specifics here. I'm not going to give you a step-by-step spoiler here. But she definitely goes on to come across him, and they kind of, he's like, well, I can take you to this place if you have anything of value. It turns out that basically the Federation is all but gone. Federation is basically a memory. So there's no more order here in the universe. And me being a Gene Roddenberry fan, there's a series back in the early 2000s called Gene Roddenberry's Andromeda. Starred Kevin Sorbo from Hercules. Okay? From Hercules and Xena fame. He played a Captain Dylan Hunt who was part of a Commonwealth, kind of like a Federation. And he was trapped in basically a black hole, singularity, for about 300 some odd years. And these basically mercenaries were hired to salvage this ship that was hanging on the edge of this singularity. And when they pull it out of the event horizon, time resumed for Captain Hunt and his ship, the Andromeda. Now, everyone else on his ship had died during this massive battle that preceded this event, okay? So he wakes up and he doesn't kill anyone, but he He disables all the bad guys, and he basically talks to them to find out what really happened to his Commonwealth, because Commonwealth is no more. Very much like the Federation is now no more, at least barely. So I think that they're taking kind of the plot point of Andromeda, and they're using it for Discovery, and I think it's going to work. I think it's going to work very well. Now, Andromeda, if you didn't watch it, you can find it on streaming services, most likely Amazon, a few others. It was more of those sci-fi syndicated shows that you would catch on the weekends, and also I think for the third or fourth season, it was picked up for Sci-Fi Channel. Um, but it had a very good cast. I liked the sci-fi vibe of it. So now Burnham and eventually the Discovery will eventually appear, maybe in the next episode or two. And they're going to be one ship trying to bring back the Federation. That's where I think this is going, guys. I don't know if that's a true spoiler, but that's definitely the vibe here. Because by the end of the episode, Michael and Book kind of comes around to her, because first he's not very trusting. He doesn't even want to know her name at first. I love that part. Obviously, these two are going to be love interests. I mean, it's a given. Plus, if you've seen the trailers, you know that they're going to get very chummy. And it's a way for Michael to kind of heal herself after the whole Ash Tyler Volk thing. So we'll see what happens. Um, but it definitely gives an Andromeda vibe. I mean, we find out that there is someone who, at least in this quadrant, there is one person who's kind of what's the word I'm looking for, guys? I'm sorry. Who's a bit of a throwback to the Federation. There's a gentleman, an older gentleman, mind you, whose father was part of the Federation, I guess, at some point, and taught him everything. And there's this small Federation outpost. They barely have communications with other quadrants or other sectors. I mean, really, the Federation just completely fell apart. And also, apparently, nobody can use warp anymore because dilithium crystals were the cause of a traumatic tragedy of some kind. We don't know why that is. Obviously, it's not something natural, but we'll see what happens. Which makes me think that Discovery is going to be the ultimate key to bringing back the Federation because of their spore drive. Because obviously the spore drive doesn't use dilithium crystals, it uses the spores in a mycelial network. So we'll see what happens with that. And also, when we last saw Stamets, he was being put into a coma because he had a shard basically impaling him. So we'll see if, one, is Stamets going to pull through? And if not, what are we going to have in his place if not? It's going to be very interesting. Are we going to see something where maybe Tilly, does the DNA injection and she is the one who's piloting Discovery through the mycelium network? We'll see what happens. So the spore drive, I think is going to be the, who knows, that might even be a key for other ships. I mean, there was talk of Slipstream. Slipstream is very much, it's not warp, but it's kind of like taking wormholes, kind of, without them actually being a wormhole, so to speak. Basically, it's almost like with the Borg. Okay, they have their network that they use to transwarp conduits, so it's kind of like that because Slipstream was featured in Andromeda as well. That's what they use to travel from point to point. Slipstream points to pop from one point to another, but you also had to pilot it. You had to pilot your ship through that slipstream, very much like Stamets does with the spore drive. So we'll see what happens with all this. The tech, the on-site transporting from spot to spot was pretty cool. I did like there was a little bit more comedy in here, and I like that because we never really see comedy, especially from the young lady who plays Michael Burnham. I'm blanking on her name right now. I'm sorry. I'm complete. Completely unprepared. But I mean, she was actually pretty funny in this episode. Um, we find that Book is actually a very good guy, and even though he's kind of Han Solo roguish, he's very much a good guy. And we find out that he's got some skills up his sleeve. So I'm very excited for Star Trek Discovery and this new approach that they're taking. Um, I wouldn't be too surprised if we see some familiar faces. We know that anyone who's watched Star Trek Lower Decks has known that a lot of the past Star Trek characters or actors, Frakes, Sturgis, um, Delancey, all open to coming back in some shape or form, as long as it's fun and it's going to suit the story. Speaking of Delancey, I could see Q making an appearance all the way now. He is an omnipotent being, so he will exist forever. So I would love to see him pop up. Maybe some slightly altered version of him. Maybe he's not so pain in the ass, and maybe he's a little bit more helpful, because the last time we saw him on screen was Voyager, after him and another Q had a son, and that son was kind of a godchild to Catherine Janeway, Captain, who is now an Admiral Janeway, but different timelines. Who knows? Maybe we'll get something different. But we'll see what happens with that. Another character I could see still existing in some shape or form is the Doctor from Voyager, the holographic Doctor. So I mean, he could still be alive. So that would be interesting. I don't think we're gonna get Patrick Stewart on here. I mean, obviously they're making Picard season 2, and they said that his body would not be lasting forever. So I mean, we'll see what happens with this. I would definitely love to see Q. I would love to see the Doctor. Um, just spitballing here. I would love to see a certain captain that we haven't seen in years. Remember, Benjamin Sisko disappeared with the prophets. They took him away to be with them. The prophets they don't exist in linear time. They can exist past, present, future, very much along the lines of Q. So could we see Sisko? I would love to see that. I would rather see a Sisko series, but we'll see what happens. So those are some of my thoughts on Discovery Season 3, Episode 1. I definitely see an Andromeda type situation coming our way, where Discovery is going to be, once they're reunited, that is, where Michael and the rest of them are going to be thrown together. They're going to be reunited, and they're going to try and rebuild the Federation in some shape or form. Now, obviously, with no Federation, I mean, heaven forbid you get the Borg, or the Dominion, or any of those factions. Hell, the Orion Syndicate could be a major faction, could even be more dangerous than Klingons. We don't know yet. So we'll see what happens. I could definitely see Michael Dorn come back, not as Worf. We know that Klingons pass on genetic traits all through time. Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country, we saw Michael Dorn as basically the lawyer, the advocate for Kirk and McCoy. And of course, he played Worf during the Next Generation. So who's to say we don't have a descendant of Michael Dorn make an appearance at some point? Those are just crazy thoughts. I'm just spitballing. That's just fan service. I would love to see those people come back. But we will see what happens. I mean, it's very exciting. Could we even see a version of Data? I mean, the last we saw Data himself, I'm not counting Star Trek Picard. I'm not counting that. We saw at the end of Nemesis, he downloaded his conscious into B4. And B4 actually retained some of that knowledge. And the last time we saw B4, he was dismantled and he was contained in scientific lab on Picard. So, I mean, could we see some kind of variation of that in the future? Maybe a human looking Data who is in maybe a biological kind of cybernetic hybrid? Who knows? We'll see what happens. But I definitely think, like, I really wish they would have done a two-part episode for the first episode, because, like, I'm just dying for Thursday to come so I can see part two, so I can see the next step. Also, this is something I would really find a little interesting in a little, in a side kind of a way. Saru. Now, last season, in season 2 of Star Trek, we saw Saru make an evolutionary leap where he lost his fear ganglia and he's more confident. You know, he's letting people duke it out and fight. We're seeing a completely different side to him now, and I think it suits him. And now he's got those little side spikes that can shoot out. I definitely see Saru being a force to be reckoned with on his own. Now, since we skipped ahead so many, several hundred years into the future, what are his people like? Has his people maybe branched out to other star systems? That would be interesting if Saru came face to face maybe with a faction of them that were a real threat and he's having to face down his own people. But he's also the cause of them going down that evolutionary path. So I think that would be pretty interesting. I can't say anything negative about this episode, guys. I love the episode. I love the feel of it. I love how pretty much the Federation is... Well, I don't love that, but I mean, all the Federation's pretty much all but gone. It's almost kind of like the Rebels versus the Empire. I know I'm going to get shot for making that reference. But I like that this is... Okay, we're against massive, unsurmountable odds. And I really can't wait to see where they're going with this. I am excited. What about you guys? Are you? What are some thoughts or theories you guys might have? Leave them in the comment section below. I'm going to keep doing, this is something new we're doing a weekly, my little opinions and takeaways from each episode of Star Trek Discovery. We may do this with a few other TV shows too. I'm on the fence. I was going to check out and do a review of the one season, one hit wonder, I guess you could say, of DC Swamp Thing, which is now being featured and aired weekly on the CW network. But I'm not sold on it. I love the original Swamp Thing movies back as a kid. The original Swamp Thing movie, and then the sequel, Return of Swamp Thing, was it was okay. There was a USA Network TV show of Swamp Thing back in the 90s. I loved that series. That was actually a real good series. I'm just not sold on this, but I'm thinking we're going to do some more kind of takes and updates on these shows. So we'll see what happens. We're not getting any new superhero shows until January, I think the earliest. So we'll see what happens. But that's it for this episode. So until next time, as always, thank you for checking out Dave's Dimension. If you liked our video, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell, and leave any comments, positive or negative, down below in the comments section. And like I say, keep on busting, and I'll catch you on the flip side.